So I'm reading through Chapter 10 of The Amazons by Adrienne Mayer, and no, this is not a review of this book, although I probably will be doing one of those at some point because it is incredible. And one of the things that I noticed was that the Amazons venerated a black rock on what was called Amazon Island. Now here's a picture of the black rock. And that immediately got me thinking back on one of my favorite fantasy books that I read this year, which was The Raven Tower by Ann Leckie. So I'm going to talk to you about The Raven Tower. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of The Raven Tower. I have it in audio, so I can't really show it to you because I'm also using my phone to film right now. But The Raven Tower was such an incredible read. I picked it up because I've been attracted to fantasy novels told in an unusual style this year. And that seemed to fit the bill because it was written in second person. First of all, I wasn't sure if I was going to actually like second person. It's one of those perspectives that I feel really needs to have a good reason in order to choose it for the narrative. But this book completely pulled it off. I absolutely loved it. The reason I loved the second person so much is because the main character is trans, but doesn't specifically state that or doesn't make the full transition into saying that he is not a woman until later on in the book. At the beginning, he explicitly tells his master that he doesn't want to transition in body, but it's left unclear whether or not he thinks of himself as a woman or a man, and later on that is clarified. Now, by choosing second person, the narrator just calls this character you instead of choosing a different pronoun, which I found really beautiful. And it gave the character enough time to really decide for himself which pronouns he would like to use, rather than having them be forced on him or changed midway through, or something like that. I really enjoyed that facet. Another reason I really liked the second person is because I was left thinking, who is the narrator? Going in, I knew it was a god, and I thought for sure that it was the Raven Lord for the longest time. And I will try not to spoil it for you because I think that's probably a plot point. So it gave that sort of mysteriousness, and it also lent that sort of mysteriousness to the narrative itself. The narrator doesn't know how the main character feels. The narrator is just guessing based on body language and surmising based on where the character came from and stuff like that. Hi. He's gonna join me? Fine. So I thought that second person perspective really worked, and I enjoyed the book a lot for that. The other reason I enjoyed this book was because it brought actual evolution into it. It started out where the narrator was submerged in water and there were no life forms, and life forms started developing, and then they left the water, but the narrator had no desire to do it themselves, and you're left wondering what sort of body the narrator has. So eventually the water receded and the narrator was exposed to the air, and as time went on, a nomadic people came to worship the narrator. And I thought that was really well done, and the narrator was talking to a friend who had started out in a body that can't move, because it's very clear that the narrator is currently in the body of a stone. This god made friends with another goddess who had left her stone and taken the form of mosquitoes for some unknown reason. Who would ever want to be a mosquito? And the mosquito goddess was urging the rock to shed the rock and choose a different body just for mobility's sake. But the fact that there were these nomadic people who were coming and worshiping this black rock, and then I read in the Amazons that the Amazons actually did this, I just found that so fascinating. It just added another layer to the Raven Tower, which I found was a very well researched in terms of evolutionary and anthropologic story to begin with. So if you have not read The Raven Tower, I strongly suggest that you do. It's one of my favorite fantasy reads for this year. Um, it's got great narration, it's got great character depth, it's got great plot points. I did not entirely see the ending coming, which I found really cool. And I just loved the way it came together. It really stands on its own as a fantasy novel. And now I basically have to go out and find more by Ann Leckie. I know that she's written some science fiction novels, so I may have to go out and borrow or buy those so I can read those. So that's my recommendation for the day. I hope you enjoy reading The Raven Tower if you get around to it, and happy reading.